How's it going, Diablo fans? So I finally completed my bouncy fireball meteor build, and I'm sorry it took so long, but I really had to get all the Paragon glyphs leveled up to level 15 at least, so I would be able to test the new and improved Paragon board and not based it on assumption anymore. So with this build, I'm currently just farming tier 100 nightmare dungeons in about 3 minutes a dungeon. I have absolutely no problems with survivability and the damage is just great. I can kill bosses, nightmare dungeon bosses, no problem. I can kill Uber Lilith, no problem. So really, it works great on single target as well. It is not optimized for boss fighting. This is an optimized build for nightmare dungeon farming and preferably nightmare dungeons without bosses, which is not really going to be a problem because you can just farm the vaults just fine. But just keep that in mind, unless you have very good gear, you're gonna struggle a little bit on bosses if you choose to play those. This build is a shotgunning build, so you want to have mobs in front of you. So you don't want to do stuff like, use your teleport, jump in the middle of the room, and then have mobs all the way around you and start, shooting fireballs into all directions. You're probably gonna die while doing this. So really, you want to have mobs in front of you so you can take full advantage of the bouncing fireball. So this is basically how it works. The bouncing fireball has immobilize. So as soon as mobs are in front of you, you start shooting them with bouncy fireballs and meteors, and they're gonna immobilize and the mobs are never going to reach you. If you put mobs in all directions around you, some of those mobs are going to reach you and they're going to hit you, and that's not what we wanna do. So basically you're creating a gauntlet of fire in front of you, and all mobs are going to run in there and just get immobilized and immediately die. And even if they are not immediately dying and they get unstoppable while being immobilized, you're gonna have the exploiters aspect. So as soon as they get unstoppable, they're gonna take another 40% extra damage, which will just result in they never gonna even reach you at all. The Meteor on cooldown is a great ability, but you don't want to use it on cooldown all the time. You want to use it on stronger packs of elites. So if you have an elite pack, you can drop 1 or 2 meteors on them and they pretty much gonna immediately die. If you're not fighting elites, you can just use the regular fireball. Of course, if you have 2 charges, you can always drop a charge here and there, even on non-elites if you feel like it. But in general, just don't spam your meteor mindlessly, because you're gonna need it on the stronger packs. It's just gonna speed up your process if you have it available at the right time when you need it. So you're gonna get a feel for this while playing this build, when you actually have to use it and when you don't have to use it. So I want to just talk a little bit how the build works in general before we go into the detailed guide. So what we're doing here is we are using the Starfall Coronet, and this is going to transform our Meteor into a cooldown spell with 2 charges, and also it's gonna drop 3 additional meteors on casting a meteor. Then also a second effect it also makes your meteor enchantment and also your enhanced meteor drop 1 additional meteor. So basically we are using the fireball, the bouncy fireball, which transforms it into an area of effects which basically hits multiple enemies, and it can also hit the same enemy multiple times, and it's gonna apply the lucky hit chance in an area of effect to pretty much all the mobs in front of you. So the more mobs there are in front of you, the more hits you're gonna do with the bouncing fireball, and the more hits you're gonna trigger the lucky hit effect of the meteor, and then the meteors are gonna start falling down. They're gonna do more meteors again, and it creates kind of a chain reaction. The chain reaction doesn't go indefinitely unless you're hitting 45 mobs all the time, because mobs are just gonna die and the chain reaction is gonna fall off. But this is pretty much the baseline of this build. Then with playing Fireball, we basically put everything we have into crit chance, critical strike damage, and lucky hit. Because Fireball and Meteor, because of the aspect of the 3 curses, greatly benefit from critical strike. So we have a very high base critical strike chance because we're using Asus boots, and we're also using the Searing Heat Paragon node giving us another 12%, and we're also using the Asus Ferocity giving us another 5%. So we have a very high base crit chance, and together with Asus Ferocity we most of the time have like in between 90 and 100% crit chance in this build. And then to further assist this, we have to play vulnerable. So what we do in this build is, first of all, we use Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear recently has been buffed and it can now apply vulnerable for us when it crits. If you have a lot of mobs on the screen, it will always crit because the enhanced Lightning Spear gives it an extra 5% crit chance whenever it crits. Simply said, it will have 100% crit chance. So what it does, first of all, it makes everything vulnerable for us, and second of all, it stuns everything for us. So it's basically the perfect ability. Then we furthermore use the Ice Blades, which we mainly gonna use to get like additional Tar Rusher stack for like another 15% damage bonus, but it also helps a little bit with cooldown reduction. So the enhanced Ice Blades and the summoned Ice Blades do a little bit of work. It is not amazing, but it's gonna help you to have a little bit more uptime on your defensive abilities, have a little bit more uptime on the Lightning Spear, and have a little bit more uptime on your Meteor. Last but not least, we gotta fix our mana. Fortunately, this is super easy in this build because we have the Fireball, which hits in an AoE and it has a very high lucky hit chance. All we really need to do is base our mana regeneration on lucky hit. So we have the Gloves of the Illuminator, which make our Fireball bounce, and these also give you mana regeneration on lucky hit. And on top of that, we are gonna use Frigid Breeze. So you might ask yourself, why would we use Frigid Breeze? We're not playing a Frost build. Yes, that's true, but Frigid Breeze has pretty much been bugged since the beginning of this game. So really, it means all damage. So it doesn't have to be cold damage. Basically, it says all damage, which is going to hit like a vulnerable enemy, has a 20% lucky hit chance to regenerate 15 mana. And that is like an absurdly high amount of mana regeneration. We just combine that with a little bit of mana cost reduction on our amulet and our focus, and it completely fixes our mana regeneration problems right there. So we don't have to invest any kind of aspects into mana regeneration. We're gonna have it all right there. Our build is not very mana hungry in general, and we're gonna have a lot of regeneration, so we have like spot for all of our offensive aspects on our gear. That is a quick explanation of this build. Make sure to check out the description down below. You're going to find links to all of my other build guides, and you will also find links to all the sections of this guide. Also, at the very end, I'm going to leave you Uber Lilith and 2 like speed farm nightmare dungeons tier 100. And now let's just get into the detailed guide. And as always, we start with the skill tree. We put 2 into Firebolt, we're using Firebolt Enchantment, then we max out Fireball into Enhanced Fireball and Greater Fireball. Greater Fireball does quite a bit of damage because it basically modifies the Fireball's base damage, so we always have like a lot of burning from the Firebolt enchantment and also from the Meteors. So this basically modifies the Fireball's base damage before critical strike chance, right? This is why it's so great. And then we put 1 point into Flame Shield, 1 point into Teleport. Really, that's all our defensives. 3 into Glass Cannon, 1 into Elemental Attunement, 3 into Precision Magic. This is a lucky hit-based build. Then we put 1 into Ice Blades with Enhanced Ice Blades and Summoned Ice Blades. This helps a little bit with cooldown, but mainly we use it for the Tar Rusher stack here. Then we put 1 into Align the Elements, 3 into Mana Shield, 3 into Protection. This is our defensive, pretty basic stuff. Then 1 into Lightning Spear with Enhanced Lightning Spear and Invoked Lightning Spear. This really helps us stunning the mobs and also apply Vulnerable. So pretty much Lightning Spear hits every single enemy on the screen no matter what. It always crits no matter what, so it's also always going to apply Vulnerable no matter what. So this is really nice for applying Vulnerable. Then we max out Meteor into Enhanced Meteor and Wizard's Meteor. You can go for Mage Meteor, but I feel like the drop speed doesn't really matter at all, so the Immobilize is definitely better here to synergize with Devouring Blaze. Then we max out Inner Flames, we max out Devouring Blaze, and you want to have 3 Devouring Blaze on your amulet for sure, because mobs are always going to be immobilized, so this is a 60% multiplier right here. Then 3 into Crippling Flames, this helps Fireball to immobilize properly. And then we put 1 into Permafrost, 1 into Hoarfrost, and 3 into Frigid Breeze. You might thinking, why Frigid Breeze? This is not a cold build. Well, Frigid Breeze is bugged, so this pretty much works for all damage, not just for cold damage. So basically, what it says is damage against vulnerable enemies has up to a 20% chance to generate 15 mana. So this is really strong. This pretty much fixes all our mana regeneration instead for boss fight scenarios. Then we put 1 into Fury Surge, 1 into Soulfire, and 3 into Worms. So Worms really like helps regenerating mana in those melee scenarios, helps regenerating health in those melee scenarios a lot. And if you want to fight boss like Uber Lilith or whatever, like, you know, you want to go Soulfire, you can probably just remove Crippling Flames and go into Soulfire. This helps a lot with mana regeneration. I don't have mana cost reduction on my amulet, and I miss resource generation on one of my rings. So probably, you know, you could get away without of this, but I don't have the perfect mana regeneration yet. So in a boss fight, I would just switch from Worms to Soulfire, and then I would have proper mana regeneration. And last but not least, we use Asus Ferocity. This is another 25% damage multiplicator and another 5% crit chance here. So for the skills, we choose Ice Blades. Mainly it's for the Tarasha stack, but also the cooldown reduction from Ice Blades helps like a little bit. It is not like super impactful, but it definitely does like a little bit. It helps you getting a little bit more uptime on your other abilities, definitely, and you get a little bit more charges basically on Meteor. Then we choose Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear pretty much pre-stuns everything on and off screen, and it also applies vulnerable to everything on and off screen. So this is like a really, really strong ability. It always critical strikes, so it always applies vulnerable, and it also always stuns. Then we use Teleport to just get around faster, obviously. Flame Shield for like our primary survivability. Then Fireball. So this you want to play this build as a shotgunning build, right? So you want to either stand still or like move like towards mobs, but you want to have mobs in front of you and then shoot them with balls. And also the mobs are gonna run inside like basically the gauntlet in front of you and just gonna die. They get immobilized and they cannot really ever touch you. You don't want to like blindly teleport into mobs and then try to, you know, throw fireballs into like all 4 directions. You really want to try to have mobs in front of you here. And then Meteor, this is like a charge build. The charges of Meteor, you have 2 charges, and depending on the roll on your Starfall Coronet, you know, this is going to be like, you know, better or like a little bit worse. But basically, whenever you encounter like elite packs, you want to like throw the meteors on them. You don't want to waste them randomly. You just cast them on cooldown on everything. So you really want to like use these on stronger packs and elite packs, suppressors, stuff like that. Then for the enchantments, we use Meteor enchantment. So Fireball has a very high lucky hit chance and it procs these like quite a bit. So if you shoot like a couple of fireballs in like a large group of mobs, you're gonna like instantly spawn like 4 or 5 meteors or something like that. And then last but not least, we use Firebolt enchantment. We really have to use this. Even though this is a fire build and Meteor will also apply burning. So we really want to have Fireball to directly apply burning. So with Firebolt enchantment, first of all, we get a little bit more fireball damage out of the advanced fireball, but also it instantly applies burning. So all our damage reduction is based on burning. A lot of our bonus damage is based on burning. So really, Fireball instantly applies burning, so this really helps you a lot with keeping the synergy going. I tried to use the construct for this. I tried with like Firewall enchantment and all kinds of crazy stuff, but it just feels like Firebolt enchantment is simply still the best variant here. Okay, let's go through items and legendary aspects. You can always find the dream stats on the planner posted in the description down below. I'm just going through my stats here. So we use the Starfall Coronet. The most important stat here is the cooldown. So really the 6 seconds is the best you need. Like everything else is bonus. Yes, it would be great to have max lucky hit chance. Yes, it would be great to have, you know, max life. But most important here is the cooldown. All other stats do not really matter. You don't really need a crazy high cooldown. I was playing this with an 8-second one and I was fine. And you can play this with an 11-second one and you will still be fine. So if you have a decent Starfall Coronet, you know, work on improving other stuff. Don't go all out of your way to like farm the perfect Starfall Coronet. You know, as soon as you get like something like 9 or 8 seconds, you know, call it a day. That's going to be fine. You don't need to spam this all the time in this build. Then on our chess piece, we use Exploiter's Aspect right now. It gives us more crowd control duration, which is really nice. It makes our Immobilize longer. It makes the Lightning Spear stun longer. So, and also, we are playing like a shotgunning build, right? So we spam fireballs on everything which is in front of us. And if something happens to get unstoppable, we get 40% bonus damage on it. And it's never gonna reach us. It's going to like it has to like basically travel through the gauntlet of fireballs, and as soon as it gets unstoppable, it gets another 40% more damage. So it's just gonna die before it reaches you. That's the whole idea here. As for the stats, you want to get total armor, maximum life, and damage reduction from distance is a really great stat here. The 4 stats I have damage from close, which is also very nice. You could also get general damage reduction or damage reduction from burning here. Then we use the gloves of the Illuminator. This is for the bouncy fireball, really. Most important stat here would be the less damage, so 26% less damage. The restore, the resource restore is a good stat, and obviously critical strike and attack speed are also good stats. So I have like a very, very awesome roll. Like this piece is like almost perfect. But in general, most important stat after the fireball damage would be the critical strike chance here. Attack speed is not so important at all. And then as for our pants, again, we're gonna get like a defensive piece. So you want to have total armor, you want to have maximum life, you want to have damage reduction from distant, and you want to have ranks of Meteor. So damage reduction from distance is far superior above damage reduction from close in this build, because again, mobs are going to be immobilized, so they are not going to hit us in melee most likely, but they can still shoot their projectiles while they're immobilized, so you want to have damage reduction from distance here most ideally. Then for boots, we use Asus. Again, I happen to find an almost perfect one here. Aim for like 25% plus critical strike chance bonus, and then 20% plus movement speed. Like this is good stats. All the other stats do not really matter at all. For our wand, we getting the Conceited Aspect here for more damage when we have a barrier, and we want to have all stats, intelligence. Damage to distance is a very great stat for us because enemies most of the time are going to be distant. And the other stat, damage to crowd control, is alright. Damage to burning would probably be the best one, or critical strike damage. Then for our amulet, I'm putting the aspect of 3 curses on there. This gives us more critical strike damage for Meteor and Fireball, which is pretty much all damage we do anyway. And then you want to have, well, here it gets like a little bit different, right? I prefer to have the movement speed because it synergizes with my Asus boot. Now there's people who then say, all right, Asus boot, if you dash, yeah, you get the 75% movement speed anyway, so you don't need movement speed on your amulet. It's a valid point, but at this point we're all using Juggernaut's aspect, so evade cooldown really is going to be 6 seconds, or even, no, it's 8 seconds actually. So this is not going to be active all the time. That's why I prefer to have movement speed on my amulet. It really helps you moving faster, and since with the Juggernaut's aspect you have the greatly increased cooldown on your evade, I really prefer to have this on my amulet. So then you also want to have ranks of Devouring Blaze. You want to have mana cost reduction, and the force that you probably want to have maximum intelligence here. You could also get like defensive skills, or you could get mastery skills. I don't really know if mastery skills is going to be so great because, it's just going to buff Meteor, but we also use like Fireball. So this is not going to buff Fireball. So I guess percent intelligence would be the better stat here then. Then we play one more ring. We use the aspect of control here. If you want to do like boss fights, you would choose like a different aspect, for example, Stormswell aspect. I feel like the aspect of control works good for me because enemies are not always going to be vulnerable. And it feels like in this season, a lot of Nightmare dungeons don't have bosses anyway. The vaults don't have bosses. So I really prefer to have like the aspect of control here. For the stats, you want to have critical strike chance, lucky hit chance, maximum life, and well, you can have a damage stat if you want, or you can go for resource generation. Both work fine. It depends like how you're handling your mana. Then we have Tal Rasha's Ring, obviously. Aim for high cooldown reduction and high lucky hit chance. The other stats are not really so important. Also, like the percentage, well, the percentage, does a difference, but 12.5% is pretty much all right. We're in the beginning of the season, so I don't want to spend so much time really min-maxing these items. I feel like my items are all right at this point, so I'm not going to farm for the perfect Tal Rasha ring at this point. You can obviously do it if you want. And last but not least, on our focus, we play the aspect of Ancient Flame. This gives us 50% attack speed bonus with our Fireball. And stats you want to have on here is critical strike chance, lucky hit chance with barrier, and well, you can now either have cooldown reduction or mana cost reduction. This is pretty much up to you. It depends how good your Coronate is. Mine, again, has a 6-second roll, so I feel like I don't really need the extra cooldown reduction, but probably still, cooldown reduction would be the better roll here instead of either one lucky hit chance or the mana cost reduction. For our construct, honestly, it doesn't even matter if you're not boss fighting. If you're not boss fighting, these abilities are not going to be active. The guy is always going to be like screens behind you and it's not going to do anything. But if you're like in the last room of the vault or if you're like fighting a boss, this actually does some stuff, right? So what we do is we use the Flash of Adrenaline. This gives us like a nice multiplicative damage bonus here. We use the duration support, so it lasts longer. We use the tactical support, so it has less cooldown. And we use the initiative support. I don't even know if it does anything, like it makes it port to the target if out of range. No clue. I just don't have another glyph which I can put into this anyway. Then we use the focus fire, which we just use to like apply additional effects. So we use the fortify support. It gives us fortify. We use the arcing support, so it hits more mobs. And we use the breaking support, which is going to give us some extra vulnerable if this guy is even attacking, right? I really don't know at this point. So if you're playing on Eternal, don't sweat it. Like, you're not going to lose anything by not having these bonuses. So really, you can play this build on Eternal just exactly the same way. For the Paragon board, I really put a lot of effort into designing this time. This is also like part why it took so long to get this build out, because I didn't have my glyphs at level 15. I need to actually test this out. So, I wanted to test the ore resistance and everything, and I needed to have my glyphs on level 15. So I had to level all these glyphs before I could actually make this Paragon board. But now I have the Paragon board done, and I'm like pretty confident with it. It's like a very nice board. It has a lot of damage reduction and a lot of damage, and in general, we are like getting the legendary nodes we need. So it's a really good Paragon board. So we start with Elementalist on the first board for 15% extra damage. It gives us non-fizz damage and it gives us Auras. Then we move over to the Searing Heat board. So we have this bonus Searing Heat maxed here. This is like a no-brainer. Like, this node is like very, very strong. And then we take a different path than you would usually see here. So we want to have these damage reduction from burning nodes. I really focused a lot of on damage reduction because I feel like our damage is like really awesome already. So really, I'm getting like all these like 16% DR clusters here. Then I'm going like through the middle, pick up the damage here, and then we pick up the Pyromaniac glyph here. So Pyromaniac glyph gives us 10% multiplicative damage as, its primary ability. It only takes like a little bit of willpower to go through this board. We don't really need all this resistance stuff here. And then it boosts our fire damage from these nodes. So I only have it like at level 16, so it's going to be like more impactful even if it's going to be like level 21, right? Then we move over to the next board. That is going to be the Burning Instinct board. We just go down here to pick the damage reduction from elites. We don't pick the armor nodes because we don't need them with Juggernaut's aspect. Then we put in our Tactician glyph here for the 10% increased damage. And also we're gonna buff our damage reduction from burning here. So this node gives us now a total of 22.5% damage reduction from burning. Together with these nodes around, we get like 29% damage reduction from burning. We get the damage to burning damage, so 45%. So like this is like a very, very nice place for your Tactician Glyph. Then moving over to the next board, this is going to be the Enchantment Master. Note, I'm not picking any of these non-fizz nodes here at all because we already have enough non-fizz damage, and I rather place like an additional Paragon Board in this build. So we pick up the Reinforced Glyph here. This is also like gonna boost our auras, it's gonna boost our non-fizz damage, and it's gonna give us 15% damage reduction. You could go for Exploit here, because I already have enough resistances. I could remove the 2 skulls from my gear and put 10% auras in here. And then we could remove the Reinforced and we could change it to Exploit. This would give us like a lot more vulnerable damage and 10% damage modificator. But for now, I want to go with the defensive style here. So that's why I put the Reinforced Glyph in here. Then move over to the next board. It's going to be the Elemental Summoner. We just picked this because, you know, there is a relatively close way to go to the next board. And we put in our Enchanter Glyph here. So we really want to get this non-fizz damage in this build. I also don't have really like a great other glyph here to get more multiplicative damage. I really can't find anyone. And so we pick up the Enchanter for the additive damage here. Also keep in mind the 60 intelligence is also 6% multiplicative damage. So really, I would always take these Enchanter glyph. Like, I haven't been using it a lot in the past, but you know, I kind of like changed my mind, and I will now always use the Enchanter glyph in all of my boards. It's just like the best glyph. And we pick up these just for like the intelligence and, you know, just give some extra auras here. And we pick up these non-fizz damage node, also gives some auras. So it's a pretty easy node, just 4 points. And then we move over to the next board. That's going to be the Ceaseless Conduit. We just use this for the glyph. We have Destruction in here for the critical strike damage. You could really like get like 1 more node here if you would spend like 2 more points. So this is definitely something you can do. Especially because you can probably strip off some auras here. So it's like super min-maxing, right? And then we move over to the last board, which is going to be Frigid Fate. There we have the Frigid Fate node. It's currently sitting at 25% because I don't have the Enchanter Glyph maxed. If the Enchanter Glyph will be maxed, this is probably also going to be at 30%. And then we just put in our Flame Feeder Glyph here for another 57% additive and another 10% direct damage here. And, you know, these nodes do not really matter at all. We just take them to take the dexterity. There you have it. That's my Bouncing Fireball Starfall Meteor build. Sorry again that it took so long. So I'm going to leave you Uber Lilith and 2 Nightmare Dungeons now. And thank you so much for watching. And I see you guys next time.